Hi, my name is Benedict, and this video is introduction manual, everything for my synthesizer, the PK-999. So the first question has to be, well, what is PK-999? Well, I'll give you a little bit of an idea. It is, as I indicated, a synthesizer. Pads, lots of effects running there, electric piano, electric piano, bass sound. Less effects on these guys. So what it is, the naming gives it away, and for anybody who's very familiar with early digital synths, they probably recognise the fundamentals of this. PK standing for Pocket Cosmos, and 999 being almost 1,000. So it's actually related in technology forms to the Casio CZ 1000, and its relatives. They're all the same engine, in that it is a phase distortion synthesizer, which is similar to Yamaha's DX, but the PD sound, the Casio CZ sound, is really quite different from the DX7. It's very simple, it's very versatile, and it's very much the way it sounds. If you don't use it well, it will sound hard, plasticky. If you use it well, it will, well, still kind of sound hard and plasticky, but it can sound very, very beautiful, and it can actually do a very passable version of analog without seeming at all like analog. The PD engine is somewhat maligned, and I understand that, but at the same time, for people who knew it and really got their head around it, there is nothing like it. So this uses a version of the phase distortion, or PD or CZ engine, they all mean the same thing, which is two digital waveforms which are changeable, but my approach is it is not an emulation of a CZ in any way, hence the naming convention, is that it's actually using the phase distortion for our main oscillator, but then that is actually being modulated by a second phase distortion oscillator. And that oscillator modulates, and I don't know what the exact term would be, but I've just suggested let's refer to it as phase distortion modulated phase distortion. So we will look at that as we go through. It can sound nasty and plastic and digital, or it can sound wonderfully nasty, plastic and digital. You're going to get it or you're not. It is Windows 64-bit VST3 only. There is no Mac version. If you are Apple afflicted, I am sorry. Please stop watching now. This is not for you. I have no intention of making an Apple version. I am sorry. So please don't ask when there will ever be a Mac version, because unless you're going to do it for me, there is not. Alrighty. There are also no presets. You might go, but every it's about, it's like, no, I can make presets. I make and sell preset banks. And I'll be honest, nobody buys them. So the reality is people who get a synth like this, they're either going to really use it or they're just not. So know yourself. If you're not going to make sounds, this is not the thing for you. This is for synthesists. It's $2 over at my coffee or Ko-fi or however you pronounce it. So if you've looked at something like Uhi's Badzilla and thought, I don't want to spend the money, or it's too complex or whatever, in some senses, this is a little like that. Only it is a little simpler because it's a smaller architecture. So again, we'll run through these. We've got this big pad sound, which can double as a string sound. It's built up with quite a few effects, just showing you how effects are really important to digital synth like this. A filter, just knocking a little off the top. An EQ, actually putting quite a lot on the top. A sort of tape drive, just softening and warming things up a bit. A massive amount of chorus. That's a bucket brigade, which I'm not sure how many versions of chorus. I think there might be 4. And this is also running 2 external LFOs. So you can see this little guy here is jiggling around fairly fast. This guy's jiggling around fairly slowly. That's these here. It is very much designed that while you can do a lot just on the front panel, most DAWs these days, especially if you're a sound designer, have a fairly advanced modulation type system on board. Obviously Reason being probably one of the best, and Bitwig is very good for that as well, but whatever, it's up to you. Fly modulation in from the outside and you can really get the most of the instrument. So again, this is the instrument raw. As I said, hard and plasticky, but it's what you do with it after that when things get interesting. Even just without that absurd chorus, if we go to a lighter chorus, or different styles, you can hear how it really comes alive. All synths are like this, but very much the case with all digital synths. So that's one sound. We'll get him out of the way. He can go too. The next one was this guy. That very simple sound, which is based on essentially a sine wave, because once you turn the shape of the phase distortion to 0, you get a perfect sine wave. With, actually there's a little bit of vibrato happening here, and a little bit of envelope controlling the depth of the modulation. So, sine wave. And that's running a tape deco. Just to give it a little bit of space. Also available at my coffee. So we'll get rid of that guy as well. And the last sound that I've got made really very quickly is a kind of a bass sound, showing you how gnarly, nasty it can get. So really the same sort of format of using this assignable envelope to change our depth. We've got 2 oscillators, essentially like 2 separate synths. This first guy, which is, but that's deliberate. And that's based on a fair amount of application of this PDing the PD, or whatever it actually does. I really don't know. If anybody knows exactly what I'm doing, I'm not sure, but that's what I think is happening. So, kind of a cool sound. And then the second oscillator is providing this, the clanky tack part. Put the 2 together, and you get a nice moving, grunty, almost industrial style bass. Effect on this guy is Hertz multiplier, which is actually one of my own as well, just released through higher Hertz, which is just adding a little bit of stereo width, a kind of a chorusy sort of a thing, but without sounding so much like a chorus. So again, just a tiny bit of effect really makes these guys come alive. As you hear in the top end, the sounds can get a bit deliberately. This has no filter on board, so you're going to want to use your own filter, and again, most devices these days have a lot of options. So let's apply sweepers. And if you got clever with the modulation and what have you, you can get a lot of control. And of course, you can choose what sorts of filters you use. Yeah, really lovely digital sort of sound. So it's very much up to you how you define your sounds. In that sense, it will commonly require a little bit of work, but it will deliver sounds that are really different from people who are using just the same synths over and over again. Rightio, let's kill this guy as well. So again, purchase over at my Ko-fi account. It's only $2 because I know it's not going to be a mainline device for anyone, but if you're looking for something outside of the ordinary, then it's a tremendous little character instrument. All right, now we look at manuals. The first thing, obviously, is how to install it. You will, if you have purchased this, get a zip file. Undo the zip file. Inside that, there will be a folder, which will be named PK-999 or something surprisingly similar, because I haven't done that bit yet, but it'll be something a lot like that. Take the whole folder, not bits of the folder, but the whole folder, and put it inside your program files, common, VST3. I'm assuming you know how to do that. It's not for me to troubleshoot that. This will work. If you put the whole folder inside there, I have a Benedict Roff-Marsh folder in there, and that's where I put the whole folder. Did I say whole folder? Yes, I did. So to instance it in your DAW, well, that's up to your DAW. You see I've been opening it a bit. In this case, it should be under my name, and then if we find PK-999. The only thing vaguely resembling a preset is just this. It will open like this, and from there, it is up to you what you do. We'll run through the features. So, as I've said, we've essentially, just like a CZ, got two slightly fully featured synthesizers. 1, 2. And you can set your levels here. You will see that all the levels for things are in a line to make it a little easier to find where things are and that they're similar, just like your envelopes are all in a line, and these are vertical as well. So the instrument moves sideways, as the box suggests, and a lot of the how things work this way, mostly vertical, but you've got some sense of the little lines showing you things that are related to each other this way. Righto, so you will see that I've used a wiring system, which is a little not digital at all. To work it, you click, normal click, on the source, and you drag to a target. You can drag the other way around as well. To remove, you right-click on the socket and the cable, and you remove the cable. If you've got several cables coming out of here and you want to remove one, it'll remove the top one first. So if you've got several here like this, and you say, okay, that one's on the bottom, so I'll go over here and remove it first. That's how that works. The reason that I use the cabling system is because, and it's built in Synthedit, if that's going to offend you, it's built in Synthedit. And while it's possible to build mod matrices, they take quite a bit of time to do. There's troubleshooting involved in them, and they take quite a lot of panel space, as in this would have needed to be bigger for no particular gain when you can use this system, and it does work really quite well. And as again I say, I really encourage you to use off-board modulation stuff. So this will give you everything you need to do all the basics. If you want to do more interesting things, and this will do some pretty wacky stuff if you want to, then get it outside of the VST itself and use whatever you have within your DAW, and that's up to you to know, stuff like this to fly in and choose sources and targets and what have you, and apply stuff to it. Again, this is not a tutorial on how to do that, merely showing you that it can be done, and that's the whole intent of this device, that it is a simple architecture, because I assume that you will be doing more pro level stuff. Get in early, learn to do that sort of stuff. It makes a big difference. Righto, we have our basic oscillator form, which we can choose here. So your shapes are saw, square, pulse, double sine, saw pulse, and then these resonant forms. So it's a resonant sawtooth. Now we'll pull this down. This is part of how the CZ can sound fairly analogy. So our saw form, as we hear, it's a pretty tidy, clean sine wave. And then it becomes sine wavy. They have a unique sound and feel to them, and this is a pretty decent copy of the CZ style, the PD form. It's not quite the same as having a real CZ, but it's close enough. Not that it matters, this isn't an emulation. So that's your basic form, and how pointy it gets. So again, to really just very simple terms, similar to FM, you've got one oscillator modifying another, but you can't see the second one in this case. It's merely applied this way. Oh, this is velocity sensitive, hence if a note's too quiet, I just am too light in my touch. Saw, square. So again, it goes from, in this case it's not quite a sine wave, I don't think, to a square, and back, pulse. So it goes again, it's a little like a subtractive filter, only in reverse. Double sine, saw pulse. So it's a saw and pulse at the same time, and then these resonant forms, which are unique but actually really rather cool. If you think they're going to sound like a Model D or a 303 or whatever, they just won't. But at the same time, they can be really beautiful when used carefully. So you've got your first form, and then you've got your second form, which can be none, or you can apply either the same thing, which really makes no change, or a second. Now through the phase distortion, the PD, the CZ style, it merely appends the second form to the first form, so you actually double the length of your waveform. So it does the sawtooth thing, and then it does the square thing. It doesn't turn them into one wave, it just puts them one after another. So it's A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, hence it drops an octave. This is not a flaw in my synth, it is merely the nature of Casio's phase distortion engine. It's odd, we live with it. So what it's doing is it's raising the modulation, or the overtoniness of the saw and of the square. Saw square, saw square, saw square at the same time. And that's part of why the phase distortion, the Casio CZ sound, is so unique, because nothing behaves like this. So you can take your saw and your resonant version of it, and now you start to get the MIDI TB303-ish sort of sound, because there's a combination thereof. So we get our basic oscillator form in the PK-999. You then got a secondary one, which initially you're not going to hear any of at all. It's exactly the same oscillator forms and the way it works. So if we've got a... let's just turn that off. A sine, and this is a pure sine as well, because you can see it's set up exactly the same. They don't start to do stuff until we change depth here. So this is saying this much of this oscillator is being applied to this oscillator. It's oscillator modulating oscillator. As I say, I think it's a kind of phase distortion of the phase distortion. So it's a slightly FM-ish sound, but it's odd. It's unique to what it does. This modulating oscillator, as I said, is never heard. It's only heard in what it does. So if we apply a fair bit of... we can now change the shape. So we've got a sine being modulated by a saw. And the results are not always what you think they're going to be. So don't be surprised if it seems strange. We can change the octave, drop it 1 octave, and that's only for the modulator. So that seems to behave differently from before. So you get really gnarly sounds, and then you can change the fine-tuning again of just the modulator. And it will beat, which is the pulsing sound. So if you keep it fairly tight, and the beating will be a different rate based upon the key. So the higher you go, the faster it will beat. This is normal for this kind of thing. A thing that's often kind of weeded out, but I heard it do it and I thought, oh, that's really rather nice. So I think it vaguely gives us something slightly like pulse width, but it is what it is. It is unique. It's more noticeable when you've got stronger overtones. So we've got this kind of phasey sound happening, which I think is rather cool. And of course, the more complex our oscillator forms get, then the gnarlier the sound will be. And there are not many synths that will do this out of the box. It's an unusual sound which may not appeal to you, or you might really go, oh, that's very nice. Now remember, most of the time we're going to want to apply a chorus and some sort of echo. I'm just grabbing these. And a modulated echo. And no, there is no oversampling in this. You're going to either accept the fact that it gives a gnarly sound, or you're simply going to be running at a higher sample rate and it'll still give a gnarly sound. This is the nature of the beast. If you ever have had a real CZ, you know that anything above sort of C4 is probably got a lot of bounce back. Really bad. Unless mine was significantly worse than most, which is entirely possible. I had a very unique CZ1000. There was something strange about it. I think its DA converter was quite out of whack. So just turn those out. So as you can see, we can get very interesting tones. We can obviously then just control them, the overall levels I've shown you. And that's really quite beautiful. We might use a little bit of filter, probably a flanger or a phaser. We'll pick up the movement that's already there. And if we grab an EQ, like one where you can really put a lot of control into things, then we can really pick out or pull out certain timbral things that are happening in there. So quite capable of being really uniquely lovely in a, well, unique and pleasant sort of a way. The next oscillator is really exactly the same, except you've got the ability to change its overall pitching. So see this as being an offset to this. This one is set in its pitching, but this one can be offset against it. So if you're making a bass sound and I need it to be an octave lower, then simply play an octave lower on your keyboard. That will get you there. But this allows you to say, okay, I now want this to be an octave apart. It's a little too exciting. Let's just tame that back a little bit. Okay. Same. 2 octaves below. And if you know really early house music, including Salt and Pepper, push it. They actually had a CZ on the stage in that video clip, but a lot of the early house organs were actually built from the CZ engine. It was great at organs. They didn't sound real, but it was great at doing them, and so they were commonly sampled off. So offset, including fine. If we get rid of that. So you can offset. Deliberate that it's done this way because that is, well, easy, less controls, but also quite similar to what the CZ did. And it controlled how the sounds got made. So the format's exactly the same here. If you listen. Now let's say we wanted to make a guitar-like sound here. We can take our LFO and apply it here. Now this actually controls the whole oscillator. I know in theory it should be somewhere else that makes it a little clearer, but I was running out of space in trying to make it very efficient. So we wire it like this. We can choose our amount of range. Not happening because I've got it turned off. So our LFO, first you've got to give it a shape. Now we'll run through some of the shapes. I'm not going to run through all of them, but it's incredibly versatile in a lot of shapes. So we can apply a small amount, a mid amount, or an incredibly large amount. So a kind of guitar. Chorus as well. Really lovely and unusual sound. But the sound wasn't meant to be that per se. It was meant to be part of a bass sound. Let's say we wanted to get a little bizarre with this. Remember, this controls the whole of this, not just the detune of the modulator. So we'll give it a really short. And we've got an unusual sound. Just turn this on, warm that up a little bit. Love it, hate it, going to work well in certain situations. So that's how we can do things that are interesting. Sometimes you got to find the right point with that. Assignable envelope is exactly what it is. It does absolutely nothing on its own until you assign it to something. So we could assign it to the oscillator. In some situations, it will have a massive effect, like far too much effect, when you assign it to here, to depth. In others, it will require a large amount of range. Yes, in theory, I should make it more even, but no, I'm not going to, because it's actually part of the charm of it, that it can do stupid things at times, like stupid outside of the expected range. Really unusual sound. It's the kind of thing that you would make and people would be, where'd you get that from? yeah, not telling you that. Cool. Again, very, very sampleable. I've already made a couple of instances of things where I've sampled the sound off for an oscillator, because I used to do that all the time with my CZ. I had my Emaxes, EMU Emaxes, and they were largely driven by oscillator forms that I would make in my CZ. Like, oh, okay, that sounds like a cool form. As short a waveform as I could get, so that I could get more waveforms into the memory of like 1 or 2 meg that were in those samplers. So highly sampleable, and you can sample it off with some effects or raw, and very, very useful. They will come back different once you put them in a sampler, but it's very cool. So as I say, the envelope form, the envelope on its own does nothing until you've assigned it to something. This LFO, as I've shown, is capable of being quite interesting. You can use it for small range, for a vibrato, a mid-size range, so if the vibrato's not as big as you want it, and then a large range. Different forms. You can turn it off entirely, which, as you saw, I forgot before. Choose a form. Choose your rate from very slow to pretty fast. Yeah, I deliberately didn't really go into the audio range. You can, by all means, fly that in, which will be affected by the data packet size of your DAW, which will make it chunky cool. Different forms. And then they start to get into interesting forms. Triangles are very... That's applying itself to the pitching. So all kinds of strange shapes, and until we get to random, which is a wonder. So you can say, okay, I want to apply a tiny amount of that to both of and therefore it softens or loosens up. But it's far more exciting if we apply the next one. This is a very, very cool feature of the CZ sound, that once you start doing modular kinds of stuff to it, it really changes its feel and becomes incredibly cool. So we could take our and do cool stuff like that. Or we can unattach that from there, put it to over here, and let's go with Reso. Turn all of these guys off. You will get some clicks and stuff, which is all really normal. So a lot of useful or entirely useless forms in here. Which are just going to give you cool extra stuff. Which is a sound unlike what you're going to find coming out of most synthesizers. So that covers our first oscillator, our second oscillator, which is really exactly the same as the first, with the exception of this offset, -2, +2, and fine. The assignable envelope, which is just a standard ADSR that you can then say, I want to send to anywhere where it says, I'm happy to accept something. It's not a lot of targets, but it's cool. And then there's LFO that you can assign quite broadly, again, just to the same targets. But don't forget that in just about any decent DAW, you've got some sort of external modulation system that you can fly in to attack anything that you want in here. Get creative. And plus, of course, it's just about all DAWs have some sort of automation system as well, which is separate from the modulation system, so that you can be moving things over time, like attack over time or decay or release over time through a phrase, which will really change how things feel. On the master, we've just got a main output, which can get a little too loud if you like, so roughly halfway if you've got these at sort of the main one that going up to 100%. A fully assignable poly from 1 to 128. It may get a little hungry if you go to 128 and press every key you own multiple times, but 16 is going to be fine most of the time, and you can change your mod wheel bend range from does nothing at all, sir, to 12. Whereupon you can get very Gary Newman with yourself. Really, really simple stuff. So again, a very simple engine, but a synth that's capable of delivering these really hard, digital, almost plasticky sounds that can be a little grainy, not because there's any kind of quantized dropping or anything like that here, just because that's the nature of how the system works. So if you're interested at all in Casio, the phase distortion engine, this is not an emulation of that instrument, but having had one and truly adored it. It's the synth I miss more than anything else after getting rid of hardware. Then this expands upon that in the sense that it is, as I say, I think it's actually phase distorting the phase distortion, in which case we can end up with these rather bizarre sorts of sounds. Cool. As to what you can do with it, as I've said, it's a character instrument, so take your time with it. It won't always behave the way you think it's going to behave because it's doing odd things. It will definitely benefit from having effects on board. No, I'm not going to add them because you've got your own stuff. Be unique. If we move this across to the bucket brigade, it's pretty darn fat. It's probably too much now. A lot more of this. And then add into reverby type stuff. Let's grab one of my own. This guy. I think we want these to be quite long. Yeah, we definitely don't want to take out that gnarly sound there with that little dip. Make it nice and chorusy. Let's turn that down a little. And we get really nice sounds. And again, you might want to assign a filter of some kind. Seeing a certain percentage of the people who pick this up are probably going to be hands of free. Towel filter. Yeah, that'll be the one. I never use this other than review it, but it is a fine filter. Right, where's the filter bit? Pan. There we go. This is supposed to be, it's supposed to do cool things. So it's as versatile as you want it to be to put the time and energy into. If you need any help or support, very important, just on this video. Please don't send me PMs because if there is support request, then I'd rather everybody see the answer. If you want my personal time and attention, delighted to give that. That's when you hire me to do something or other, to sound design, mix for you, build your own VST, whatever it is that you want. But public support is public so that everybody else who's going to ask the same question as you has already got access to the answer. It's efficient. This is only $2. And yeah, otherwise get out there, play with this. If you've done something that's notable in your piece, not just me too dropping links, if you've done something that's notable with this, by all means share that again in the video below. I'll go have a listen. If I think it's cool, I'll tell you it's cool. If it's just a Me Too advert, then I will just simply put that where it belongs. All right, have fun. That's the important thing. Head over to my coffee, purchase it for $2. Have a great day.